If there's anything we can do that doesn't idolize the work and doesn't idolize the thing that brings joy, but it connects these 2 points, then it gives a little more believability to it for the time where we can't actually, our faith is not yet sight.
Welcome to the Stay at Work Home. We are here to question the prevailing assumptions about the meaning of life, work, and the purpose of people. Instead of being torn apart by our vocations, we want to be pulled together. Come along with us as we change our picture of the good life and pursue the home as God intended, one that worships through work together. I don't know.
Good one. I don't want to do this.
Good podcast. Okay, we're going to do it anyway. Why don't you want to do this podcast?
Because you critique me about this a lot.
I do not.
Yes, you do.
Well, maybe I do. What do I critique you about? Please enlighten everyone.
I don't know. I don't want to talk about it.
What did Goethe say?
Well, Goethe says lots of things in German, but the English translation of the quote that I most often think about that Goethe says is to stop endlessly striving to do what you want, but instead learn to love what must be done.
Okay. What must be done? Maybe that should be the title.
A lot of
loving,
things.
doing, not done. Which do we love more, the doing or the done? It is going to be a much easier life for anyone who embraces the doing rather than the done. We will be constantly doing, and when something is done, it is immediately being undone.
Entropy.
Or dead. So, why does that offend you so much?
Cleaning a house while you have toddlers at home is like brushing your teeth while you're eating an Oreo.
You didn't know that that's what I wrote.
You didn't say the Oreo. You said shoveling snow while it's snowing. I said shoveling
snow. That's right.
But I think the brushing your teeth while you're eating an Oreo is actually more. I can picture the Oreo crumbs everywhere.
It's like
sweeping the floor while the Cheez-Its are still being eaten. You know, or sweeping the porch off while the dirt is consistently being pulled out of the pots and thrown back down onto the floor.
True.
Yeah.
For true.
Or the goat is right there and about to poop on the porch again. Why bother sweeping it off right now?
The goat may indeed have been on the porch today. But to my knowledge,
why pick the ticks when there's going to be a one to replace it in just a half second?
To my knowledge, no one actually took any pictures of any of our goats or dogs or any other animals and posted them on Facebook to let anyone know that they were loose on a particular road, which is not always the case.
No, you're saying nobody did that?
Nobody did that today.
Oh, not today. Yeah.
That's the point. Okay. Yes.
Do you know it's Kelly's dad?
Kelly who?
Bless.
Oh, yeah. That Kelly. Yeah, I think I heard you say that.
Okay. It's funny.
That is crazy. Anyway. So we knew who it was.
Sort of.
Okay. I'm glad it wasn't anybody else that actually lives like right on this road. So.
This just makes me want to tell the goat story. Can we just tell a funny story? Can we just tell a funny story? No? Is it not time?
Tell the story.
Okay. So about goats being out. So we were gone to camp in Iowa for winter camp. And on the first of the year, we're driving home. We're up in northern Illinois. We just crossed the river from Iowa. We got 4.5 hours to go, I think, after we visited your aunt and uncle. And I get a text message from a gal who I'm friends with, but not like super close or anything. And I didn't even know she had my number.
She was in Wild and Free.
She would not. Anyway, it was for a hot second. Anyway, that's how we first met.
She met us and met you. Wild and Free.
You might need to edit some of that. Anyway, so
we were in Wild and she was in Wild and Free.
I'm fine with that.
Time.
I just don't want to like knock other people's. Anyway, I don't need to tell other. This is my story, not everybody else's.
I'll shut up.
Okay. Well, I can't tell her story, is what I'm saying. Except for this part of her story where she and her family were deciding to take this lovely first of the year hike, New Year's Day hike, which is one of the best places.
Edit.
This really, okay. So, and we live really close to a lovely like hiking trail in Southern Illinois. Can I say Illinois? We lived really close to this beautiful Midwestern hiking trail with some beautiful bluffs. All right. And this gal wanted to take a hike. It'd be really fun to see the cuts on this one. But she texted me and said, hey, I didn't even know I had your number, but my family and I are out hiking for this New Year's Day hike. And I don't know anybody else that lives close to here, but we're at the trailhead, which is about 2 miles from our house. And there are like 3 goats and a dog here. And my immediate response was, you want to send me a picture? My second thought was like, of course they're my goats and my dog. Like, I don't need a picture. They're definitely my goats and my dog. Nobody else's goats and dogs out there. There's nobody else's goats and dogs that go hiking together on this trail. Well, so she does send me a picture. And she's like, do you want us to do anything? And I'm like, no, if they got themselves there, they can get themselves home. We had somebody watching them. They were getting fed. It wasn't like they were, but when we are home, and I think they haven't seen us in a while, our dog knows.
They start wandering.
Hike. They start wandering.
And then they start wandering.
And they start wandering, and they go places that are familiar. And so Keith and the kids go ride down on this trail on the horses often, and the dogs follow. The goats haven't ever followed you before. But I think it was the dog's fault that this all happened. But anyway, he stuck with his goats, and they hiked the entire 3-mile trail and back. And at the end of the hike, we're, a couple hours further down the road, and she gets to the end of the hike and she's like, well, they stayed with us for the entire hike, all 3 goats and the dog. Do you want us to put them in our van? I'm like, no, they got themselves there. They'll get themselves home. And the dog would not get in the car anyway. No, that dog doesn't get in the vehicle. He is impossible. So,
and he's huge.
We were about an hour from home then. And then the neighbor about half a mile from the house texts Keith and says, hey, I think your goats are over here. And they're like, oh yeah, they're just on their way home from their hike. And by the time we were home, they were all in the yard. Okay, that was the goat story. That was for free.
Most of the goats are back in captivity now.
Yeah, most.
There's only one out right now, and it's the one that's just Houdini.
Yeah. Okay. So, what were we actually going to talk about?
Sweeping the porch or blowing off the porch when the goat is still pooping on it. Mm-hmm. So, is there any moral imperative to clean things?
I tell myself, and I think there's some truth to be said for stewarding well the things that you have.
Okay.
That to just have ownership of a thing is not it has to come with the responsibility of having ownership of the thing. So we have a home. And by having a home, that includes having the responsibility that comes with having a home. Mm. So I don't just like, ta-da, I have my home, and now I let it fall apart. Mm. Or I do, actually. I feel like I do.
And maybe, I think if we were honest, and we're not, I'm just kidding. I mean, if we were honest, we might say that this place is a little more than we'd rather chew in a lot of ways.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, certainly. Right? In some ways.
Like the house is not small. We got a good deal on it.
Yeah. Actually, I think it's important to say this because we loved the idea of being here, but we knew the house was too much, the property was too much, as far as responsibility goes. But that it was the kind, and then maybe this is where you're going to get eventually.
And it would tie us down.
But it's the kind of work we wanted to learn how to do.
That's true. Somebody said the other day, because somebody wanted to buy a farm, because it's like a thing to go buy a farm, especially if you're, seems to be like guys that can retire early, like maybe in their 50s, they'll want to go buy a farm. And at that age, they're young enough to kind of handle it. But what somebody told him, you don't have a farm has you. And that's true. And if you have the standard consumeristic mindset that does not allow you or sees being tied down as a liability, then that's very much a problem. I think the counter to that is go read Wendell Berry and find a sense of place, or understand what a sense of place is and accept that as being probably the better trade-off than the opposite. But I'm getting off track because the point was the doing, which this property with its acres of pasture, its acres of woods, its long driveway, It's gravel. It's 6-stall horse barn with other more than the stalls. All the area around it. It's more than we can handle in our current mindset. And it is not your mindset because, so we're trying to kick off this podcast and she's like, I don't want to do that. I hate you.
I didn't say I hate you.
She didn't say I hate you, but she said something.
I love you.
This is just going to be you judging me.
Well, I did say that.
And no, if you like, I could think of several things offhand. I could fill all my fingers probably pretty quickly with things that need to be done that haven't been done, that I'm way behind on as far as maintaining this property, that you would not think of as your responsibility. Generally speaking, you think the house reflects, if the house is messed up, say we have somebody over, it reflects poorly on you.
It does.
And if the yard is messed up, then that, there's yard, and then there's
the driveway in the woods,
If there's a rut in the driveway because the last thunderstorm rutted it out and I haven't taken care of it yet, then that reflects poorly on me. There are plenty of things that if you walk around here could reflect poorly on me. We are having to learn this, and it does not come easy to us. There seem to be people, and I would say they're like the steady people. There are people that are just maintainers of stuff. Somebody has said, I don't know who it is, forgot, that there are like 5 sort of, they came up with 5 like major expressions of masculinity. Okay. So one's like essentially the explorer. This guy. Start stuff.
That's you too.
Find new lands. Like that's all in the explore. Mr. Visionary would be another one of the categories I think that somebody else came up with, right? And then there's
we don't talk about Bruno.
Husbanding, which is
caretaking
of
living things,
keeping stuff going, like maintainers of systems. I am a system starter. I don't mind coming up with a system. Just don't ask me to maintain it, right? Like that's where I'm going to start failing probably. That's an area I need growth in. I don't remember all the other ones. One of them was Sage. That has to do with learning and also being able to teach wisdom and so forth. So for me, that maintenance part, and they said it was, they said expressions of masculinity. Really, I think it's expressions of humanity. And we can get into that. That's another podcast I want to do. The military model of marriage. I wrote something at some point called the military model of marriage. And it kind of tossed out the idea of gender roles for the idea of family mission. And basically you jump in where you fit. And it gets rid of a lot of the controversy, I think. Relying on kind of how a military and army company would work or something. Okay, all that to say, it's hard to love the doing and not the done. Now, the big idea, obviously, with this podcast is the idea that work is not to be avoided. But the reason that this means so much to me is because I'm always talking to myself. I'm the one that needs to hear what I'm saying, as far as I know, more than anybody else. So for me to be able to embrace the doing is to get over a lot of probably just mimetic consumerist ethic that I absorbed, that I'm imitating, because it was told to me through enculturation that you need to go enjoy these experiences and don't be tied down to be affluent, whatever, big accomplishments, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not just that. There's something in me. I mean, it's sloth, right? So like all major religions, I recently studied Buddhism quite a bit, and like
just one of those things you studied.
Because explorer guy, right?
Not sage.
Not gonna be a Buddhist, but and if I did, I wouldn't be very long because I'd be off something else.
They'd be okay with that.
But sloth is an idea there of like kind of laziness that comes in with like theft. It's interesting. They have a thing called the 3 poisons that kind of encapsulate what we would have in the 10 Commandments. Anyway, I have those. Okay. The flip side of that, what I see is people that are getting it, that have embraced work as their calling and sort of their highest self-actualization. They don't have fear of missing out as a byproduct of their doing. I do. I constantly have fear of missing out if I'm simply doing. This entire project is maybe way too self-referencing, that I have fear of missing out if I, waste hours trying to fix my daughter's convertible as opposed to just taking it to somebody. I should go get a real job that pays a good hourly rate, that specializes in something, and then pay somebody else to fix the Swedish convertible. And
that's really old.
It's really old, 25 years old.
By the way.
It was a really good deal. Even in its some state of some disrepair.
Our kid's car is 11 years older than herself.
Yes, that's how it should be.
But it is still a convertible.
My first car was 1 year newer than me, actually. It's very interesting to think that 280ZX.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm old. Well, it's not too.
Huh. My first car was much younger than me.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So the modern consumerist ethic would say that you need to go specialize in something that gives you a very high hourly rate. Maybe if you made $50 an hour doing whatever you were doing, the guy that you pay $50 an hour to will get the convertible fixed 5 times as fast. And therefore you have more time left to do what? To watch TV? I don't know.
I don't know, but
was it bad that I went and hung out with, or I didn't hang out, that Annika and I and Martin and William and Trace to some extent sat there and struggled through the trying to make this convertible top work for a couple of hours?
Probably not.
We have a fear of missing out because we did that. Mm-hmm. So what Randy told me one time, I won't talk about Randy. He's
high profile.
He's high profile. What Randy told me, he had back to the Amish again. He had an Amish crew building a pole barn for him at his property. And so a thing he noticed about them was that they were always working. This is the exact quote from him. Always working, but never in a hurry. I think we do everything opposite of that in our culture.
We're always in a hurry, not working.
If we're trying to not work, we spend a significant amount of time not working, and we're always in a hurry. And if we are working, we're definitely in a hurry. I don't want to be that way. And I need an ideological justification, a theological justification, a philosophical justification for why I shouldn't listen to what the prevailing norms say, and that I can waste 2 hours working on the car, or digging the footers myself for the new cabin, or whatever the thing is that I'm really not remotely qualified to do, but I'm doing anyway. Now, that does not address brushing your teeth while eating Oreos or shoveling snow while there's a blizzard. Yeah. But it's similar.
I think of the kids who don't want to make the bed, which, I mean, well, full disclosure here, we were not bed makers for a long time. And actually, the first thing that has significantly changed since you left a traditional career, it was not traditional by any means, but anyway, a normal salary job. The first thing that changed.
I started waking up with my wife
every day, which is the first time
in our marriage
that this has happened. I mean, we're going on 10 months of that. And we really haven't, there might've been no, cause you were in the guard then.
There was never normalcy.
There's never been a consistent period of time where we woke up in the same bed.
Went to bed together, woke up together
for more than a month at a time.
Sometimes a wake up was a different person. Just kidding. Not really.
So when we do that though, I was like, let's make the bed. And we did. And we did again.
It's actually become a habit.
It is a habit. It's a habit so much now that if one of us has to get up earlier than the other usually just makes the bed when they get up. just because that's what you do.
When you went out of town
Mhm.
and I was here by myself,
Mhm.
I made the bed.
When you were out of town at camp, actually, we haven't stayed in the same place. That we had a little break because you were gone for those few days. But you know what I did? This is what I did when
You slept on top of the cover.
Sleep on top.
I knew it.
So I don't have to make it. But I rearranged the pillows in the morning. So it's still
wrong.
made.
Shouldn't do that.
Why is that wrong?
She wants to sleep on top of the covers all the time.
No, not all the time. Not all the time.
At nap time.
I just don't want to make the bed again.
I will take several articles of clothing off.
Pull
the sheets back
for a 5-minute nap. The dude has to take off his
It's a 15-minute nap.
He has to take off his shirt, gets down to his skimpies like he's going to bed for the whole night, sets an alarm for 5 minutes, and he gets back up and dresses again.
If I set an alarm, it's for 20 plus
his
minutes.
Shirt always has his long button shirts on, unless he's wearing t-shirts, I guess. But
turning over a new leaf.
Yeah.
Right to bear arms. Second Amendment.
You're a dork.
Got to be constitutional.
I think that
if you don't use it, you'll lose it.
I see progress in myself in some ways. When we were first married, like the bane of my existence, it's so silly, was washing dishes. Like I really hated it. I absolutely hated just the effort that went into preparing a meal, eating the meal, and then 5 minutes later, you're back to having to like clean up after it and put things away. And when we were early married, we could kind of get away with like not, because a normal set of dishes has like serving 8, and it was just the 2 of us. So we could go like 4 meals without having to wash anything, maybe even more. And we did. Like, I don't know if you remember that, but we did. And you were right there behind me.
Wait till the sink is full.
Wait till the sink is full, yeah.
And then a little more than full.
Right. And we did have dishwashers in most of our places for a while. But ironically, actually, the first time that we didn't have a dishwasher for a period of time is when we moved here. And we were hopping around different places. And we were in a camper for 3 months. Then we were in an Airbnb that did have one for a couple weeks, and then another Airbnb for 4 months without one. Then moved into a friend's house.
This is part of the episode. Doing things that people think are crazy in order to achieve the outcomes you really, really want.
Yeah. Is that idolatry of wanting this particular place? That might be that too. Anyway, so we went for like 9 months.
It's not as bad as like
9.
moving west on a Conestoga wagon.
We went 8 or 9 months without a dishwasher. But in that time, actually, there was this one other period when you were deployed, and it's just Annika and I at home. So she's, 1.5, 2. Because it was just Annika and I, like I would maybe cook occasionally, and we would have some dishes, but it seemed so dumb to use the dishwasher when you weren't home, and I wasn't making full meals. And so I did leave the dishes to the end of the day. And then it was lethargic. No, cathartic. Not lethargic.
It's not lethargic.
The opposite.
But if you don't do the dishes,
you'll get lethargic.
It could be because you're lethargic.
Anyway, I would go do the dishes by hand because it gave me a sense of like coming down off the day and just processing some order and structure and maintaining home, keeping the home fires burning. That actually was probably like a literal what I was doing there. It was like I felt like I was a housewife even though you were gone for a year. I could still be in my role washing the dishes by hand. It didn't feel like I was doing that if I did it in the dishwasher.
I think Betsy is 84 or close to it. Knocking on the door.
She turned 80.
Sharpest 84-year-old you're going to meet. And spry too.
In more ways than one. She's sharp.
Oh, she's sharp. She will stab you intellectually.
Love her.
But she does not have a... They have a dishwasher?
No, they don't have one.
And she will not let you wash a dish. She
gets mad, actually. She's like, I will not.
She'll start hitting the
dishwasher.
Get out of my kitchen.
I like washing dishes. Yeah.
It's her therapy.
It is her therapy. Yeah. Anyway.
She also has a doctorate in history. So like she's a person that does hard things. Oh my goodness. I don't know if it's true, but I heard that if you do hard things, it actually, so like our genetics are there, but they'll alter themselves and then they'll switch back. They'll kind of change. Your children's genetics will be different if you do hard things. It will make them more prepared to do hard things.
I could see that in any way.
And it's going to rewire your own brain. But like, remember the math guy, the mathematician from the university that ate at our house one time?
From Singapore?
No. He's American. He's a professor. At any rate.
That was Gahani's professor?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely remember him.
He said that there was just a oddly high number of his counterparts in the math department who do ultra marathons, Ironman, long distance bicycling, all these like really, really hard things.
I don't think he did.
He didn't. I don't know what hard thing he did, but it wasn't any of those. Not judging.
I have ideas.
Like it goes together. Like there's other things. Like I think of somebody who's very successful at one particular like kind of normal occupation that pays very well. And he has like an awesome wood shop that he set up in his house. And he just does working all the time. He's producing stuff in his spare time. That's great. Yeah, there's all kinds of people.
Does it drive his wife crazy?
It probably does.
Pretty much anything.
No, because she couldn't hear it.
It drives him crazy. Yeah, I know.
It'll drive her crazy.
Now I know who you're talking about. Definitely drives her crazy.
It drives her crazy? That's funny.
Yeah. Anyway.
Do hard things like the
bed. Okay, so
make your bed.
Make your bed.
Wash your dishes. And then your kids will be Navy SEALs.
Do the laundry.
Laundry is the awful.
Yeah. But I guess we do use that as the carrot to get people to do well.
Okay, so we redeemed something that was laundry-ish last night.
Last night?
Was it last night? No, must have been. Was it Saturday night?
It was Saturday night.
Saturday night. We have gravel driveway and we have a gravel circle drive. And there's just lots of gravel. Gravel everywhere. And there's grass that grows in the gravel. And I have sprayed it with weed killer sometimes, but I really don't like doing it a lot. And I don't use enough. And so I might as well not because it doesn't work. Anyway, we went and pulled weeds for north of 45 minutes.
Maybe, yeah.
As a family, everybody pulling weeds. We went by 3 different areas. And actually the last place we went was kind of a garden area that we should decorate, but we haven't. Pull all the grass and weeds out of there while initially Annika and then Becky read a book to us. Mm-hmm. What book was it?
The Merriweathers, which actually was really cute. That's from Betsy. That's her book. Mm-hmm. And it was
Betsy?
Yeah, Betsy George.
Older Betsy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Am I allowed to say names?
No, stop saying last names.
Oh.
OPSEC, honey. OPSEC. Operational Security.
Okay. But
the Ukrainians would not have been able to surprise
book.
the Russians in this recent foray into Russia if they would have been so loose-lipped.
Oh, well, I make a bad one. There's something even in the book that was even talking about the family working together and doing a task together, which actually was really perfect. I think it actually calmed our kids down a little bit to do what they were doing because they'll do anything for a story. I mean, they'll sing for a story. They'll work for a story. They'll, stop fighting for a story, all that. They love reading stories. And I do especially, I think everybody craves the read aloud. That's not the audiobook that we all do together. So it was Little Britches with you. And then
that was so good.
Yeah. Which Gracie has to read that for school starting this week. So we could do it again. I don't know if I have time. But anyway, it did redeem that time. Pulling. It's really funny because I actually, when I'm not fighting for the time, do you remember when we went to that, what's that veterans thing? We did the beach thing in Georgia, where we got like a
beach.
There was a beach nearby in our little town. Was that American Legion or something like that? We signed up one of those and vets. Anyway, and they had this little beach that if you were a member of the veteran club that you could go use this beach. Well, we signed up for it just before we ended up moving, so it really didn't help us out. But you were in there talking to the people one day.
That wasn't VFW.
And I was standing outside and I was waiting for you, but the beach wasn't being used. It might have been in April or something. And there were just all these weeds in the beach. And at first I was annoyed with you because, well, Keith likes to talk to everybody forever. And especially when the kids aren't dangling off of him, then he forgets that they exist and that they're dangling off of somebody or fighting somewhere else that somebody else has to deal with. So he forgets those things if they're not in front of his face.
Guilty as charged.
So I was frustrated, but I started pulling these weeds. And then he had to kind of drag me off the beach to stop pulling the weeds out of there because there's something. Okay. And here's it's a funny thing. The reason that's so wonderful is because weeds don't grow back that fast. Mm-hmm. And this wasn't my space, right? So this was a space that I could actually make a concerted effort in this 30 minutes of wasted time otherwise. And I can do something and get it done.
It's like faster than painting.
I got it done. I actually really cleaned up that small little swatch of beach. I cleaned up all the weeds out of that beach. I was very proud of myself for that. Yeah. Anyway, all that to say.
We need to read books on laundry folding night.
Yeah, we could. I guess part of my trouble, even when we were doing this the other night, was that I felt like I should be doing the pulling of the weeds too. Mm-hmm. And sometimes your job isn't to pull the weeds. Sometimes your job's mom to read the book. And like I think they are okay with you reading the book, but there are poems written about this, about mother reading to you, like that mom being the reader. And because I read to them enough that it's very comforting, I think, to them. That
woman is the keeper of wisdom and culture. I mean,
I'll remind you of that when I give you feedback next time. Anyway. On anything. I'm
repository. Keep it to yourself.
How many times can I hit you in one podcast episode? I don't know. It is on video. Anyway.
Evidence.
Everybody has a different job in those working together moments. But the kids, I don't think, thought too much about the fact that the weeds were going to grow back fast. And they may not actually grow back fast because it's late enough in the season. Yeah. But I do remember, like, when I was a child in the garden, we hated weeding the garden.
Did you ever get read to while you were weeding the garden?
No. Do you know what we did?
What'd you do?
I'm going to call my brothers out right now.
Got bit by ticks?
No, not ticks usually. No, actually, we didn't usually. I don't remember. I feel like my parents didn't have a lot of bugs in the garden. I don't remember that. But you know what would happen? We would fight over the spot that wasn't visible from the kitchen window, because you know what you could do in the spot that wasn't visible from the kitchen window?
Eat cherry tomatoes.
You could not weed, but there's only like one spot that you could hide in, and you know who always got it?
Abby. She wasn't even alive yet.
No,
Isaac.
Bingo. And Adam would get mad and start punching people.
Trace.
And then I would try to trick Isaac out of the spot, right? Or I would be like, well, I'm only doing this row and then I'm done. And I would make sure I chose the row that was the easiest. Trace. Anyway. Anyway, it was fun times. But I hated weeding the garden because, like, seriously, you would weed it on a Tuesday. And if you had to go back out again on a Thursday, it was just covered again. I hated it. And there are some gardens that, like, they're covered in weeds and they still we did this.
You still got covered in weeds in a week?
Yes.
You didn't do a very good job.
No, because I sat in the hidden spot as much as I could. So did the rest of them. They had 10 children. We still couldn't get that garden weeded. But I do think, had we turned it into a family affair, there might have been some hope for that. But anyway, that's a whole.
So, hashtag resolutions.
Yeah.
Hashtag goals.
Read a story. There are other things you could do.
We're going to do better with gardening next year, and we're going to read and weed.
Read and weed.
And that has nothing to do with smoking anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even if our state loves the stuff, and you could come tour our area and get all kinds.
Is your cabin 420 friendly?
Yeah.
I've gotten that question
more than once. Anyway, no is the simple answer.
Not.
Heck no is the more complex answer.
Our cabin is not stinky friendly.
Mm-mm. So there are other things you can do when you're doing hard work, I guess.
You can sing.
But I guess I hadn't thought about that particular component of fitting into what you're saying here.
Do you remember?
The doing becomes pleasurable. It takes the work and redeems it.
Do you remember when sometimes I fill in at church preaching, and I filled in one time, and it's getting late.
Was that a bad time for a yawn? That might have been staged.
Something like a Freudian slip. Freudian yawn. And my point, I was making this point that, like, when you're cleaning up the diaper or the vomit in the floor or whatever.
Or on the couch.
Like, okay, you materially, right? You start off a situation, there's no vomit on the couch. Then there is vomit on the couch. Then you take the vomit off the couch somehow through a painful and smelly process that makes you want to vomit. And at the end, it's as though it never happened. Was there any worth to it? The thing you did. It will probably be forgotten.
By everybody but you.
By everybody but you. And maybe even you. If it's me, I'll even forget it too. What all the things, the sweeping the floor today, the sweeping the floor tomorrow, the sweeping the floor for the 10,000th time. God remembers the first and the 5,333rd. And so there's nothing more permanent than God. God predetermined what was going to happen. The sweeping, the vomiting, the unvomiting.
I'm imagining vomit going back into your mouth, and that sounds bad. Anyway.
Bucket. So it's not gone. It's gone, but it's not gone. It's remembered by God, and that's the most permanent thing we can hope for.
And that, I mean, I think there's this realm of seeing the unseen, or feeling the unseen, believing the unseen, if you will. And that's just hard. There's just, and that doesn't happen overnight. And I think like we are talking about that with our math curriculum right now, that's actually the ultimate goal of what we're doing in math, is that we're trying to see things that you actually can't see. You only see, do you guys know you can only see in the third dimension everything you possibly can conceptualize? Like truly.
If something is two-dimensional,
3D.
It's actually invisible.
You cannot see 2 dimension. You cannot see the 1 dimension. You cannot see 0 dimension, and you can't see 4th dimension or ND, other than if the ND is 3, n equals 3. That's just unfathomable. Anyway, so much of what we do in mathematics is actually not in the 3rd dimension. Most of geometry is in the 3rd dimension. A lot of geometry is, but most other things are not. And so when all the things that you think of, moving numbers on a number line, multiplication, division, exponentiation, all that kind of stuff, that's all in 2D, or, well, you do my math, remember my rows here. That might be in the 1D. 2 points on a line. 0D is point, right? And then the 1D is 2 points on a line. And then 2D is, length and width. So that's your flat shapes. And then the 3D is length.
But if it's truly flat, it has no height, and therefore it has no substance.
It doesn't actually.
It's theoretical.
It's theoretical. Yeah. So all that to say, that is new to me as an almost 40-year-old person, to think about how much I can't. Those things excite me now, but they excite me now as an adult because I guess maybe I've seen evidence of the unseen so much in my life, both pragmatically evidence of the unseen, and that math does stuff. Like, even though we can't see it, it accomplishes things. Chemistry does stuff. You can't see atoms, right?
Right.
It's impossible. Everything we can conceptualize about atoms is because light, you were just reading this in the textbook the other day, light is, it's too small for light to actually reflect off of. Is that what you said? Yeah. So this whole entire amount of body of knowledge that we insist on our students learning because it's so important
is actually theoretical.
But that it's that understanding of these theoretical things that make this phone that we're recording this thing on exist. It's chemistry, right?
We're not actually recording on the phone. It's just being used as a camera. And there's an app for that, but I'm not going to tell you what it is because they don't pay me money.
Maybe later. We'll see. Anyhow, so seeing the unseen.
If you email me, I'll tell you.
If in lieu of the ability to see the unseen, or to appreciate even the desire to see the unseen, I want my children to learn math, even if they don't love it. I want to help them to grow to love it over time, but that doesn't happen quickly. And the only ways to make that happen are to attach them, the unseen things, to things we can see, right? To help them to hear or know or tangibly feel or practice or try and hear stories. Stories is a big one. So you add the things that God gave us sensory-wise to try to help make those things real. So rewind all of that back to you're saying that we have to we're trusting that God sees these things, even though no one else sees them. Like, we saw them for a moment. We participated in it for a moment, but to some degree that was a point. That was 0 dimension. That was a moment, came and went, right? It's not connected necessarily to other things. But what we can do is when we attach those moments to something that's more tangible, like the joy, and I can't think of anything with the vomit. Maybe your spray smells good at the end of it all. I don't know. We'll work on that later. But the things that are unpleasurable, like continuing to weed the garden, when we add something tangibly pleasurable, that we make the work pleasurable. If there's anything we can do that doesn't idolize the work and doesn't idolize the thing that brings joy, but it connects these 2 points, then it gives a little more believability to it for the time where we can't actually, our faith is not yet sight, right? We're adding some flesh to it. That was all on the fly. Yeah.
Was that pretty good? That was pretty good.
Wait, you were asking.
That was pretty good, don't you?
You're asking me if that was pretty good.
It was good. High five.
Anyway.
Okay, so fear of missing out. No, you're not missing out on anything by doing the dishes.
Our Heavenly Father sees the things in secret.
Changing diapers. Educating.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I would imagine that it would be a very difficult thing if you were not as dedicated to the more systematic side of education. For me, it would be hard. It's a lot of hours. It's not that many hours, but it's for me, it would seem like a lot of hours for sure. And it's theoretical, right? Like the kid.
There isn't a input this, output that.
No.
Like that doesn't
It's
exist.
much slower than that.
Yeah. Although you can see the fruit and then see the line to the things, but you have to get to the fruit to be able to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we've got it. I think we're actually going to keel over and die because we're tired.
Yeah.
That's
I have good thoughts, but they're not
good day.
They're not coming out at this point.
Yeah.
It's going to be about educating. Oh, well, one of the things that comes up a lot when people are discussing home education, especially, there's the obvious, I don't have patience for that. What about socialization? Don't get me started. We'll do a podcast series on that topic. But outside of that, the next thing is... What would you do if
your kid goes to the workforce not knowing how to do a proper keg stand? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, well, we don't know how to, do we?
No, I don't know. You know what it really means.
Yeah, that's a theoretical
upside
thing.
Down drinking beer.
But the next big thing is what do I use? And in our time, in our modern age, we have the abundance of resources, which is paralyzing. So many people walk into thinking, I can homeschool. Okay, I've seen all these people homeschool. I know it's possible. Everybody says anybody can do it. Now I'm going to Google search homeschooling my kindergartner, homeschooling my 4th grader. And they have pages and pages and pages of really beautiful looking, laid out, great videos, reviews on all this stuff. And you'll hear all these testimonies from this person, that person, the other. But one thing that one podcaster that I love says and talks about is that pretty much any of them work. If they've made it to the point of having it out there, it'll work. But the biggest thing a child needs more than, and this is convicting and it's also encouraging. The one thing children need more than anything else is a joyful teacher, is a teacher who can find joy in the mundane work of whatever the thing that you're doing with your children. And I have found accidentally to a degree, did we find something that I love teaching. I love teaching the way we're teaching. Mm-hmm. I love teaching the content we're teaching. I mostly love reaping the fruit of my kids almost teaching me as I'm teaching them. We're learning, it's just give and take and ebb and flow because of this classical model of education and the way that it actually works in real time. I love it. And that's why we do it. That's the top number one reason why I am still homeschooling the way we started. Was because I love it. And I grew over time.
So I think the reason that we're still doing it is because we started out with the right reasons, which was really the right reason was long-term. You saw, what age were they? Were they challenged 3?
They had just graduated. The lady speaking at the practicum had just graduated her first child out of their senior year.
You saw the kids talking.
That was a little bit later, actually, that I saw the children. I didn't see it. The children.
Okay, but the lady talking told you
about her children.
So
and what they were doing.
We saw the result. It was children that behaved a certain way and were just incredibly impressive. And it was okay, whatever they're smoking, we want some.
And I want to say this is important, I think, for me because this is actually really tied more to the real underlying reason. It wasn't that I wanted
classical conversations. Let's just say that.
Oh yeah, and we'll get to the episodes on CC. But what I saw in these students that I was hearing about, it wasn't that I was ooh, I want that kid. I want my kid to be that kid. I wanted to be that kid. I was so envious of what I heard these children had. And I was like, I did good in school. I made good grades. I sucked up to the teacher so well. I skipped the majority of my senior year of high school and still made top scores, right? I was pretty close there to the last. I didn't care enough.
I was at school
all the time.
All the time.
And he did a horrible job. But I didn't suck up. He barely made it through. No, you kind of did. It was
better than a 3.0. Okay. Without taking anything hard.
I took some hard things. But I wanted what those kids had for myself.
Yeah. And,
we have the ability as adults to see more of the unseen because we have experience to connect it to over time. And that's what fed into our homeschool.
The person who is not doing CC or is doing CC and isn't liking it for whatever reasons, or has a fear that they're missing out on something for whatever reason, regardless of what you're doing. I have a metabolic analogy for you. You ready? Becky's going to sleep again.
I didn't do well in chemistry. I think that word is related to chemistry.
Your body metabolizes things, which is a big word for does stuff with them. You eat the stuff and it changes it into other stuff and sends it out to your body. Do you know what food you can eat and your body can make everything it needs out of it? It's been proven by science. Trust me.
What?
Twinkies. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it may indeed be the world's most perfect food. Now imagine what your body can do with bananas. Point being, kids, because they are little knowledge sponges and they are constantly learning, they're created that way, they're wired to learn. If you do something, you put some amount of effort into it, they're going to come out okay. And if they don't, it was probably something other than you chose the wrong curriculum. That has nothing to do with loving, doing, not done, but maybe it does somehow. I don't know.
We tie it up at some point.
But always working, never in a hurry, enjoying work, doing the dishes, and not feeling like you're getting left out of anything. Read while you weed. And that is not an advertisement for cannabis. But it is an advertisement for heartlandbunkies.com, who's the official sponsor of the Stay at Work Home. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been real. It's been fun. Good night.
Cheers.
If you've enjoyed what you've just heard, please subscribe and share. Also, check out our website and blog, stayatworkhome.com. This episode of the Stay at Work Home is brought to you by heartlandbunkies.com. Come check out our full line of small cabin kits that can be easily assembled by a few friends or family in just a weekend for extra space for meaningful connection, or extra income, or a home office, a homeschool room, or whatever.